GBNews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello and welcome to Wednesday night with obviously someone that quite clearly isn't Laurence Vlogs. Too tall, blonde and slightly irritating as well, but that's about where it finishes. I'm actually Dawn Neaton. I'm in tonight for the lovely Laurence and you won't want to miss it. I've got a Fleet Street treat for you in the very attractive shape of former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and he is here to give us his thoughts throughout the entire show. So, coming up tonight, Nicola Sturgeon, yes, you might have heard her name somewhat today, has abdicated her throne as First Minister of Scotland. We'll be taking a look at what caused the leader's demise, everything from the controversial Gender Recognition Act to the long-standing feud with her former boss, Alex Salmond. And it has emerged that nearly £1 million has been spent on a diversity recruitment drive in the armed forces, whilst our military's accommodation has been falling to pieces, facing scandal after scandal. Perhaps the money could be spent better elsewhere. We also want to take a look into the recent protests and riots in Liverpool against the Home Office's relentless migrant hotel policy. Former Sunday Mirror editor Paul Connew, see Fleet Street link here, will be here to talk us through that one. And just to round it all off, remember that drink famous for the totally tropical taste? Like all good things in life, it's been cancelled. There you go. That's all coming up after the latest headlines with the very lovely Porrie Middlehurst.
Dawn, thank you and good evening to you. The top story on GB News tonight. Rishi Sunak has been thanking Nicola Sturgeon for her service after the First Minister made a surprise announcement that she was to step down after 8 years in power. Ms Sturgeon said she was proud to have been the first female and longest-serving First Minister of Scotland. She'll remain in role until her successor is appointed. Ms Sturgeon acknowledged that the move might seem sudden, but denied it was due to short-term pressures and said she'd been wrestling with the idea for weeks.
To those who do feel shocked, disappointed, perhaps even a bit angry with me, please know that while hard, and be in no doubt, this is really hard for me, my decision comes from a place of duty and of love. Tough love, perhaps, but love nevertheless for my party and above all for the country.
Well, also in the news tonight, Lancashire police say missing mother of two, Nicola Bulley, had a history of significant issues with alcohol, which was brought on by her ongoing struggles with menopause. And within the last hour, we've heard that underwater rescue experts, SGI, that were brought in for the search, said they weren't aware of this information as it would have changed their search strategy. Detectives say the 45-year-old was listed as high-risk missing due to the number of specific vulnerabilities she had. Miss Bulley's been missing now for 19 days. The former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn says Sir Keir Starmer barring him from standing as a Labour candidate at the next general election is a flagrant attack on democracy. He also said it's a divisive distraction from the overriding goal to defeat the Conservative Party. The Labour leader had earlier apologised for the party's handling of anti-Semitism under his predecessor. And the Equality and Human Rights Commission announced it'll end its monitoring of the party 2 years after finding it was responsible for unlawful harassment and discrimination. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, says the fight to reduce inflation is far from over, despite the rate decreasing for the third consecutive month. Data from the Office for National Statistics show the Consumer Price Index fell to 10.1% in January. That's down from 10.5% in December. The drop was largely due to the price of fuel and transport slowing. Now, the government's announced it'll donate another £25 million towards relief in earthquake-hit Turkey and Syria. Some of the funds will provide tents and blankets for families who are now homeless and struggling in freezing temperatures. It now brings the UK's total financial support to almost £43 million. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB Plus radio. You're with GB News. Now Laurence Fox has Dawn in the chair.
Thank you, Polly. Now, I'm not entirely sure how you're feeling the morning after the Valentine's night before, but slightly convinced I'm in some kind of chocolate and champagne-fueled parallel universe, even though the doctor does assure me there is at least some blood left in my alcohol system. Pretty sure I'm still drunk. Well, how on earth do you explain that Nicola Sturgeon has cancelled herself, Keir Starmer has cancelled Jeremy Corbyn, our armed forces have cancelled Common Sense, and either ET or the Chinese are spying on us? Oh, and don't forget that a well-known soft drink is now, checking my notes, oh yes, racist, because what isn't? Talk about stop the world, it's time to get off. Oh, oops, sorry, you can't even do that, as it would involve fighting your way through all those layers of weird weather balloons. Sorry. Look, if you have only just crawled out from under the duvet, don't blame me after last night, everyone's favourite Wee Jimmy Cranky tribute act announced today that she was stepping down as First Minister of Scotland. This is despite the fact, just a couple of weeks ago, Nicola Sturgeon was insisting she had plenty left in her tank. Oh, it doesn't bear thinking about, does it? Fast forward to today, and she says she's been mulling over whether to go for some weeks. Well, what's that about? She denies her decision has anything to do with a new poll, revealing Scottish appetite for independence is currently lower than the 45% recorded in the 2014 referendum, or indeed the fact that she thought it was perfectly acceptable to put a convicted rapist into a woman's prison because he suddenly started wearing a wig and a lot of pink. Nope, it's honestly to spend more time with her family and that she knows when to go. Though I'm not entirely sure that last bit's true, as it took her over 30 minutes of self-indulgent Jacinda Ardern resignation-style claptrap to say bye. Strangely, there was no time to mention Scotland's appalling drug addiction problems, the state of the NHS, the education system, the constant strikes or the interesting SNP donations. Nicola is not the only one out of a job today, though, is she? Back in England, Keir Starmer finally climbed down off his favourite fence to basically sack his former leader and mate, Jeremy Corbyn, which means Jezza won't be standing as an MP come the next election. Well, not in England. Possibly time for the Scots to start shoving Hadrian's Wall back up, just in case. Not just British politics that have gone mad today, though. Another fun tidbit for you is that our armed forces have admitted spending an incredible £1 million on a diversity jobs drive. You know, making sure that all the relevant boxes for sex, race, religion, sexuality, age, body type have been ticked. Whether any of them can actually fight or not is obviously neither here nor there. Well, not like there's a war going on a short flight away, is there? Or that our armed forces are currently at the lowest levels we've seen, with just 156,000 armed personnel. Now, that might sound a lot, but to help you visualise that, Wembley Stadium holds 90,000. China has the world's biggest army with 2 million, and Russia has 830,000. And, well, that's before Putin started emptying the prisons of rapists and murderers to go and fight in the Ukraine. And our lot are worried about offending the woke mob by not having enough ethnic minorities or genders. Do me a favour. Look, geez, it's enough to make anyone reach for a stiff drink, or even a soft one. But not Lilt, though. Oh, no, can't do that. The fruity, fizzy beverage with a totally topical taste is now, yep, racist. As is everything these days, isn't it, obviously? And talking of the importance of skin colour, let's go back to those mysterious balloons the Americans are busy blasting out of the sky. Could they be sent by little green extraterrestrials rather than the Chinese? Be worrying, wouldn't it? Nah, not because of the fear of flying saucers suddenly hovering menacingly over our major cities, but what in the hell we're supposed to do when the invading aliens demand what they always do in the movies, and that's be taken to our leaders. Right, well, lots more on those issues to come in the following hour, so stay with us because there is loads to cover. But first, I really want to talk about a story that's broken this evening. Lancashire police say missing mother Nicola Bulley had a history of significant issues with alcohol, which was possibly brought on by her ongoing struggles with the menopause. This is, after all this time, we are now learning this information. Joining us now to explain what is going on and what difference this makes is Peter Fording, who led the independent specialist diving team that took part in the search for Nicola. Can you just tell us briefly what has happened this afternoon? There was a press conference, and what have the police said about this situation?
Well, I've just seen the press statement, really, Dawn, and they just said that Nicola had an alcohol problem. I mean, that detail didn't necessarily need to be released to the public, but it would have been useful if we had been given that information on the day as trusted search experts, bearing in mind we were being tasked by the police search advisor and given areas of water to search. If we'd known on the day, we would have kept it quiet. We wouldn't have told the media, but it would have assisted us, because I had the theory that she had just slipped into the river, and where it is, it's only 2 foot deep. So I would have thought about other areas to actually search.
So what do you make of this being released now?
I'm just quite shocked, really, that this has been given now probably to the public at this time. I think they've panicked. I mean, I work with the police every day. I mean, got great respect for them, and I've never seen this ever happen. Normally, Dawn, we're given the confidential information on complex murdering cases, and we keep that information to ourselves, which actually helps us in the search, whether it be on land or in water. I'm bearing in mind I deal with about 10 drowning victims a year and a number of suicides where people just take themselves into water and drown, and we locate them and recover them. So I was shocked that I got this information was held back from us. So what difference would it have made to how you have handled what you have been asked to do? You're working very closely with the family as well, aren't you? So what difference would it have made? Well, it would have made me believe that possibly she could, Nicola could have wandered off. She could have wandered down the riverbank and potentially taken her own life. She could have wandered off and fallen in at another place, because the area we were tasked with searching was absolutely clear. There was search by police divers 3 times. It was searching us by side scan sonar. And we even extended our search upriver, extended the parameters just in case Nicola had wandered off and fallen in. So now I'm changing, has Nicola wandered off somewhere else, because there was no CCTV specifically along the main entry route, and the police have confirmed that in their press conference today.
Why do you think it has taken until now for this information to come out? Surely it's so important for everybody to be aware of the full circumstances of what might have happened.
Well, it does make life easier, because then the members of the public could search their own sheds. I mean, Nicola could have wandered off. She could have literally fallen asleep somewhere. She could have just taken herself off and wandered off into the woods. So it covers all avenues now. So the whole search strategy, obviously the police knew this. but the people who are conducting the search and the public had no idea. And I think it's been a bit of a panic. There's been so much pressure today to actually come out and release that information. The family never told me at the stage, and the poor family are in pieces, and that's not what they want to hear, really.
No, of course. And finally, Peter, just one final question. What difference does it make to what you and your team do now?
Well, I've offered to give my services free of charge because I said I'm a registered expert with the National Crime Agency. This is what we do. We work with the police. I've offered to go up there and assist them, and the offer's open. I say I am trusted by the police, and to assist in any land search. Hopefully, Nicola's just wandered off. She's gone somewhere. She's had enough. Let's just pray that that's the case. And then let's just all work together to find some sort of resolution for this family and some form of closure.
I think we all want that. Peter, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. And I say it's a breaking news story, and we can all but hope that Nicola is found and reunited with her two little girls who are just 6 and 9 years old. We move on. Now, as I mentioned, Nicola Sturgeon resigned as Scotland's first longest-serving female minister. Now, was Sturgeon a success or a failure for Scotland? With me to discuss this is Tessa Dunlop, a journalist and historian. Hello, Tessa. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Right, so it was a bit out of the blue this morning. I thought, oh, gosh. So what do you make of what Nicola has said today?
First of all, it wasn't entirely unexpected. I had pretty good intel approximately a year ago that she intended to step down before the election. I was actually on a train coming south, so still in Scotland, when the news broke, and there was a collective gasp in the carriage. I think, Dawn, I respect you deeply, but I think it's important that we don't ridicule Nicola Sturgeon. I thought your introduction was a little bit disrespectful, cranky, or whatever you called that. And this is possibly one of the most impressive, successful, principled. Now, I'm no nationalist. I abhor nationalism, whether it's packaged as Brexit or packaged in the form of the SNP. But I know a lot of people who work with her, and they all testify to her personability, to her presence, to her tireless commitment, her ability to inspire those around her, and remarkably, to remain in power, in fact, to win a general election when she raised income tax, and to hold a huge number of people in Scotland closed in on a vision, a romantic idyll that Scotland is possibly could be a better world if it was independent, and to consistently bang that drum and stayed in power and held her ship together and grown a party. We have to respect that, and I think learn from it. A lot of us, our political class need to learn from the Nicola Sturgeon model. Strip away that nationalism. I wish the Labour Party had got her when she was a teenager, not the SNP. But she was an impressive, and she remains an impressive woman.
The argument I would have against that, Tessa, is the gender reform bill. I mean, it does seem the timing. A couple of weeks ago, she was going nowhere, and now suddenly it's like I'm stepping down because for the sake of spending more time with her family. But this does come in the controversy over obviously the whole sort of like, the gender reform problem, and, are rapists, male, female, whatever. So, I mean, how much do you think that is to do with what's happened today?
She was still on course to win the next election in Scotland, granted somewhat dented. The gender reform bill was something that Nicola Sturgeon has been quietly initially and more noisily committed to for some 6 years. It's in many ways a kind of blueprint Sturgeon bill where she takes it like a terrier across the line. I think, yes, she didn't carry the groundswell of support in Scotland, but in some respects, depending how you flip the coin, you could say, well, that's a sign of her principles, that she was going to gun for this minority, she was going to support them, come what may. Now, in fact, in the longer run, we don't know how the gender reform bill will play out, whether, in fact, Scotland being told what to do by Westminster won't in the end play for the SNP. We won't know. But I say once again, I knew that Nicola Sturgeon would be stepping down before the next election. And that was the intel on the ground. And I genuinely believe, I know, funnily enough, I was in Scotland doing the debate show about 2 weeks ago, pushing hard against the SNP. Their record, for instance, on education, dismal, with the NHS, dismal. They can't get a ferry out of the docks at the moment, but yet look how they hold huge numbers of their population but alongside them in the ballot box. So we have to give them credit where credit's due. And I can say that among the young grassroots workers in that party, they look up to her. I saw young women respect, oh, she's everyday, she's so polite, she's so committed. You know, find me any other politician virtually who people will talk about in those terms.
Kelvin, let's bring you on this. What did you make about Nicola's standing down today?
Well, it's the inevitability of most of her policies falling away with and also I think that there are two kind of issues that aren't getting debated. One is, why did her husband lend 100 grand interest-free to his own party and then try and keep it secret? I think that will turn out to be a massive explosion. And what she didn't want to be is actually having her collar felt while she was the First Minister of Scotland. And I also think it's quite, I think Miss Dunlop has a rather curious view of this lady, because to try and indicate that if you'd strip out the nationalism, she was a fine leader. Well, actually, the whole point of the SNP, I expect the SNP's vote to go up, the independents' vote to go up, not down. Sturgeon was a divisive figure. She accepted herself in her own speech that she was, and so they're down to 45. I expect it to rise dramatically. So there are three issues about her. One, her own personality was not winning over the kind of the middle way. Secondly, her husband. What was the 100 grand about? What was the £600,000? Where was this money being spent? That's the difficult issue for her. And thirdly, I honestly have got to say to us, look, anybody who does 8 or 9 years in mainstream politics at the top of the pile, it seems to be the absolute end of the game. Thatcher, 10 years. Blair, 10 years. Now, I think 7 years for Jacinda, her 8 to 9 years. Nobody can carry on getting a basin load being poured on them day in, day out. As for her being a decent leader, I'm absolutely certain that you'll see nationalism actually surge with a new leader because so many people didn't like her.
Tesla?
I want to pick up on that final point. Not Miss Dunlop, by the way. Haven't been a miss for a very long time, Kelvin. But I
wasn't sure, so I didn't want to embarrass you.
About nationalism surging. The worry is, and I speak for a huge number of unionists in Scotland, and I'm a copper-bottomed unionist. You know, first 20 years in Scotland to an English mother, now living in England. I don't want Britain to end, which is effectively what the end game of Nicola Sturgeon's vision would result in. And we need to hold fast and respect that and understand what's at stake here. But I think we need to bear in mind, so Kelvin thinks that nationalism will go up. The problem is, what kind of nationalism will it be? Will it be a kind of Nigel Farage populist nationalism, a more muscular nationalism stripped of the civil veneer that Nicola Sturgeon gave it? And if that's the case, then I'm deeply worried, and I know several Scots who are deeply worried, more than several, I can tell you tonight, that actually Nicola Sturgeon, while on the one hand, yes, I agree that from the Scottish Labour's point of view, there's a real chance for them here to make a dent. They certainly won't win, they're a long way from that, but to make a dent that will impact on their chances in Westminster. But actually, what kind of nationalism are we going to get in Scotland? And we may all find we're very much missing Nicola Sturgeon in the next few years.
Do you think, Tessa, that without the gender reform problem, that she would still have stayed on? I mean, it seems to be the impression that most people are getting is that because of this situation where, you know, the recent story about the rapist, Isla or Adam, whatever you want to call him, you know, going to a female prison and then her having to backtrack on that was really the writing on the wall for her.
Thing is, this is again where we're in our own echo chambers, and oh, England's picked up on this story that's happening in Scotland. This isn't the only time that Nicola Sturgeon's been badly tackled by what's happened, what's gone down in Scottish politics. It's just this one's bled over the border. And at the moment, it looks like it's been a tripwire for her. But like I say, I think in the longer term, let's see how this plays out. Because I can tell you something, the Scots won't like being told what to do by Westminster. And I know that the majority of people in Scotland don't support this bill, but you could find them saying, it's our law to make a mess of, butt out. And that doesn't help the unionist cause. So this has to be very delicately handled. And my concern is that we don't have the right administration in place in Westminster at the moment to handle it delicately.
Calvin, would you like a last word on this one?
Well, anybody with any brains, had any money, had any entrepreneurial skill has fled out of Scotland at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Taxes up, NHS down, education down, a chief executive of the SNP lending 100 grand and taking it back again. Why did all that happen? There's a shocking smell, and the departure of Miss Sturgeon is a triumph for common sense Scotland.
Right, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. Very interesting debate, one that will no doubt go on over the next few weeks. Thank you for joining us on that, Tessa. Great to talk to you as usual. And coming up, almost 1 million of your hard-earned money has been spent on woke causes. Stay tuned to find out what.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Right, what does diversity have to do with defence of the realm? Not a lot, you'd imagine. See, the thing about the military is that it's not about you, It's not its job to reflect society. There's a reason you can't join the army if, say, you're overweight or you have one leg or you're shorter than 4 foot 10 inches. The military is machined to be called on to defend us in times of grave danger. Combat effectiveness should be the only thing that matters. This is precisely why the military is exempt from most other employment law legislation, including the Equalities Act 2010. So why is it then that defence bosses have splurged almost, hold on, I'm looking at £1 million, £1 million on diversity jobs recruitment drive? This comes after the revelation that the RAF had been prioritises BAME candidates ahead of white recruits. So what on earth is going on? I just want, you know, people to look after us, protect the country, that sort of thing. Call me old school. Right, with us to discuss this is former infantry officer, a veteran of Iraq, Northern Ireland and the Balkans and Afghanistan, Colonel Richard Kemp. Hello, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Right, so what is going on with this? I mean, it's like woke gone mad again, is it?
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, of course, you know, it is important that the armed forces represent the balance and the makeup of the country as far as possible, but as you were suggesting, not to the exclusion of being able to defend the country. There's no point in having a hugely diverse armed forces and spending money on diversity objectives if they don't have the resources to actually fight and defend the country. And the reality is today they don't have those resources. So £1 million spent on diversity campaigns would be much better spent, in my view, on actually equipping the armed forces with fighting capabilities. And of course, it's just a drop in the ocean. The whole woke religion has spread around the Ministry of Defence, as with every other government department, for many years now, and is undermining its combat effectiveness.
Kelvin, what do you make of this? I mean, £1 million when we're struggling at the moment with recruitment, we're having to make, you know, we're having to cut our forces.
Well, I'm not entirely hostile to the idea. After all, if we cannot, recruiting for the armed services is quite tough, quite difficult, even with the much smaller forces that we have today compared to 10 or even 20 years ago, which in its sense is an absolute scandal and actually makes us look absolute idiots on the world military stage. The truth about the matter is that the homes that we have for our soldiers are shocking, and the £1 million would be better starting to do those up, 101%. That would be the first one. But look, if we can't find white recruits to fill up our armed forces, then we do need people of different colour in order to do that. And if they feel unattracted to come to it, we have to change that. I'm afraid that is the reality of our lives. I know it sounds strange, but I don't care what colour people are who fight for me. If they're fighting for a decent cause, they can be any colour you like.
Surely it should be just the best person for the job. I'm not actually... If someone is going to fight for the country, protect me, save my family, save my loved ones, I don't actually care.
But that is a different argument. Our problem right now, as I understand it, is that we do not have a load of people saying, I tell you what, I must join the army. It's just not happening. And therefore, we must try and make it attractive. And at the moment, for whatever reason, it is not attractive. We don't need an armed force of 87,500, which I saw that number the other day, which is a shocking, shocking number. The idea that the French are beginning to look down upon us as an armed force is something that we should feel great shame about. And we need to get that up. So I am behind Wallace 100%. We need to spend proper money. Now, this will mean that somebody, and it might be universal credit, is not going to get the money that they used to get. They may have to go out to work. Tough. We need to be able to fight our own corner these days in a world which looks, I mean, Colonel Kemp knows a lot more about it than I do, looks a very, very dangerous prospect.
Richard, what do you make of what Calvin's just said? I mean, we do feel like we are... You know, we're losing our protection. I mean, compared to what's the army in China is 2 million, is it? And in Russia, 830,900, and we can barely fill Wembley Stadium.
No, we've got far too few troops. The successive governments have been wearing down the armed forces over a long period of time. But look, actually, I would disagree on the issue of recruiting. I don't think it's at all hard to recruit people, whether they're white, black, or any other colour, to join the armed forces. It's not difficult at all. There's no shortage of people coming forward. The difficulty we have, which has been going on now for
it's gone.
Actually, it makes we've got a recruiting system that, in order to allegedly save money, does not work. And actually, I often speak to young men or young women who want to join the armed forces and can't do so because the system doesn't allow them to. They're perfectly good people. So it's not that there's a shortage of people out there willing to join and fight. It's the system that we have that needs to be sorted out. And it's been a problem for many years. It was a problem also when I was serving.
So do you think, the answer is that we need to actually, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace is seeking up to $1 billion from Jeremy Hunt in next month's budget. Do you think that we are cutting our cloth too tight on this one?
Absolutely, and we have been for many years. We've got, we've got an increasingly dangerous world. And even, just as an example, even since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, which should have taught many people a lesson that they'd perhaps forgotten about the realities of the threats we face. Even after that, we're still today cutting the size of the British Army, even below the very low level it is now. So, yeah, of course, more money is needed in the Army, in the Navy and in the Air Force, but I would say particularly in the Army, which has been badly neglected. And we've tended to emphasise modern technology and things like cyber, drones, etc., and at the expense of hard combat power. We need both, is the reality. And defence these days is hugely expensive, but somehow we need to be able to put our hands in our pockets and produce what's required. And Ukraine is enough of an example, I would have thought, to our politicians to show them that we do need that, even if defence is not as big a vote winner as NHS or education or whatever, that somehow the money's got to be found in order to be able to defend our country, or we simply will not be in a position to have the other services, because as I think it's a sort of fairly trite saying, but the first duty of every government is the security and the defence of the country.
Absolutely, and when we have the situation in Ukraine just a short flight away. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Richard Kemp. Great to talk to you, and hopefully someone sees sense somewhere along the line. Right, coming up, the riots in Merseyside. Was it, as Lisa Nandy said, down to right-wing rhetoric, or was it to do with the safety concerns of locals not being taken seriously? We'll be getting into that after this break. Don't go too far.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Dawn Neeson for Laurence Fox. Right, we've no doubt all heard about the riots outside at a hotel used to house migrants in Knowsley in Merseyside. What to make of them then? The disturbances were reportedly sparked by footage of migrants housed inside, aggressively pestering local underage girls in school uniform for sex. Some of those on the left, however, have been claiming that, say, Suella Braverman using the word invasion was ultimately to blame. Is it that, or is the threat to locals, particularly women and young girls, but we have a huge culture issue here going on with some of the people, in the area that's led to this disorder? One only needs to look across the North Atlantic to what's going on in Sweden to know that these fears aren't unfounded. And let's not forget, every Conservative and Labour manifesto since the days of John Major has promised less migration and a tougher asylum system. Yeah, how's that one going then? Been broken by every government, hasn't it? A pattern that shows, sadly, no sign of letting up. Right, to discuss this ongoing situation now is a Fleet Street legend, surrounded by them tonight. No sniggering in the corner there, Calvin. And Paul Connew, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us tonight, Paul. Now, Paul, what do you make of this situation of what's going on in Merseyside at the moment? Because it is still an ongoing situation.
No one quite knows for sure, I don't think. There are so many conflicting versions of events. I think the guiltiest part of here, though, is probably social media. In fact, not for the first time, where a lot of people have been flying a lot of things around on social media from both the left and the right, and it's all very confusing. No one quite knows exactly what went on and how if you like, the protest that turned violent, in fact, who organised it? Was it spontaneous or was it actually clearly orchestrated? The far right, without doubt, involved to an extent, but that doesn't mean that it was only the far right. And of course, the far left turned up, or the left turned up as well, and the whole thing got out of hand. But anybody who's championing the cause of, if you like, protecting the British way of life, in fact, attacking the police and actually burning down police vehicles is hardly compatible with that principle.
No, of course they're not. And obviously there are going to be agitators on both sides, on the far right and the far left, but there are genuinely concerned parents in the area of young girls in particular. I mean, we have a huge culture issue with these migrants based in the hotels and how they behave around young women. And the story that this 15-year-old schoolgirl who was propositioned by a 25-year-old migrant, she was quite clearly in her school uniform. So there is a culture issue here. So you can understand, ignoring the far right and the far left agitating, the concerned parents have a right to raise awareness of this issue.
I quite agree. Of course they have. But what we don't know for certain is whether the allegedly 25-year-old man was actually a resident of the migrant hotel or not. I don't think he's been identified for certain yet, so we don't quite know the background to how the video came onto the social media platforms and played a large part in stirring up emotions.
Calvin, can you understand how emotions are running high, though? So you have, groups of... And, they are surprisingly, all very young, fit, fighting-age men who are being housed in local communities where there are vulnerable women and girls still. What do you make of the situation?
Well, anybody, if you're in a small town and, 400, 500, 200, 300 channel migrants have come into your town, you're going to see a change in your high street, not least of all because, quite rightly, those migrants can't work. They've got to do something. They walk up and down all day, and therefore you will know that your town is slightly different than it was, for instance, 6 months ago. I mean, the reality is we now have 150,000 of these channel migrants now still seeking visas. And it's all right for Lisa and Andy to wander around shouting out, far right, far right. The truth about the matter is, any polling shows that this country is enormously concerned about what is happening every single day. 2,000 more have turned up in February alone. So for Lisa and Andy's, she's in favour of all this. Don't let's worry about that. All we're getting is fine words coming out of Sunak and Braverman. Actually, no action at all, because actually the solution may be quite difficult. Actually, on the other side, they're basically saying we are going to allow embassies to allow people who are wandering around Europe to come to our embassy and say we are seeking asylum. Forget about 150,000. Start thinking about half of Africa and most of the Middle East queuing up outside our embassies. They have a worse solution than even the way that obviously the ineffectual Sunak or Braverman have. It is shocking, beyond shocking.
Calvin, unless you smash the migrant gangs totally, you're not going to solve this problem. Every government has tried, every government has failed. And the Rwanda plan, is not going to work, apart from the legal battles going on around it. Rwanda's not going to be able to cope with, in fact, taking thousands and thousands, unless you break the business model of the trafficking gangs. You are going to have the same problem for all Rishi Sunak's fine words.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. But to do nothing on either side of the political divide, because the Tories talk a good game, nothing on earth has happened, even while tens of thousands have been coming in every quarter. And Labour actually have a worse solution. I say, quite simply, we have to take the law into our own hands. If we were Israel, do you think Israel would be sitting here right now saying there's a whole load of people on the Belgian and French coast, they're doing this, what are we going to do about it? They would just say, oh, we're not going to do anything. Actually, Israel would go in and they would shoot them. And that is the solution. You actually have to cut the neck of the snake. And if you don't do that...
we bomb or shoot people on small boats crossing the channel?
No, we actually shoot the smuggling gangs. Actually take them out completely. What would be wrong with that? Are you in favour of actually the country literally tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands? Where would you stop? Tens of millions? There are a lot of people out there who want your way of life.
But we had during the referendum campaign Boris Johnson talking about half of Turkey coming here. When of course Turkey isn't in the EU, it wouldn't have happened anyway. We have a problem. I'm totally opposed to people crossing the channel in boats organised by criminal gangs, but I also think we do need to have a proper processing, of potential migrants or refugees, Because we do need people in this country. Since Brexit, we have a major labour shortage.
Paul, you mentioned
should be allowed to work. Should be allowed to work.
Paul, you mentioned the B word. B word's banned. B word's banned on my show tonight. I'm sorry. Look, unfortunately, we do have to go to a break now. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Paul. Well, that got fiery, didn't it? Coming up, first they took Aztec bars, and then it was Opal fruits. You won't believe what British icon has just been cancelled. Stick around and find out next.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Laurence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, welcome back. It's Dawn Neeson in for Laurence Fox. Well, just today it was announced that Lilt, the drink renowned for its totally tropical taste, I would do the accent, but I'm terrible at accents, is to be discontinued. And what's more, it's going to be absorbed by Fanta into a Fanta grapefruit and pineapple replacement. Doesn't sound very catchy, does it? A bit bonkers, really. Right, so joining me now to talk about this very serious subject. We need some light relief today, don't we? Edward Adu, the DJ and radio presenter and very good chum. And Edward, there you are. Right, OK, what do you make of this?
How are you doing? You well?
I'm very good, thank you very much. I'm actually needing a drink, something stronger than...
Lilt for me has been... It's been a great drink over the years, and for someone to say it's cultural appropriation or it's racist, it's a drink. I mean, I think the rebrand, I think Coca-Cola have possibly made a mistake because it's got all of us talking. It's great advertising for them.
Yes.
If it was a publicity stunt, it would be the greatest publicity stunt ever. But to rebrand and to talk about the adverts, I mean, growing up, I was talking about it on the radio. Some colleagues were talking about it earlier. When you had a glass, or you held the Lilt can, it was a form of escapism. Back in the 80s, growing up, when there was no social media, there was no internet, you saw a Lilt can, you thought, oh my word, it's tropical vibes. You just want to be on the beach. That's it. Nothing else.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, it's like, you know, where are we going to stop with this one? What is wrong with Lilt? I mean, you know, there are some things that you think, right, OK, might be a bit old-fashioned now that we don't want, but this is not offensive, is it, Edward?
No, far from it. Far from it. I think, to be honest, a lot of people, and we're not talking about just, say, it's about one particular type of person. Everyone has been deeply upset about this, and they thought, why does it have to be rebranded? Just keep it as it is.
Well, you know what, Edward? I don't think anyone is actually offended by it at all. I'm sure they haven't had a single complaint. And where do you stop? Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So go and
No, Dawn. Take care. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Edward. And thank you, Edward, Kelvin, and all my guests. And Dan Wootton is up next. Hello, lovely Mr. Wootton. What have we got coming up?
How upset I am about the end of Lilt. It's like my favourite drink. Seriously.
Right, OK.
So I very much enjoyed that segment. But, Dawn, we're going to be missing you on the sofa tonight. But great show. I've loved it. You can imagine how happy I am, because I think the union is saved. Genuinely, the separatism fantasy is now in tatters, and we're going to be covering it from all angles tonight. Plus, the Conservative Party Deputy Chairman, Lee Anderson, live in the studio.
Oh, I want to join you. Right, I'll have to go, unfortunately. Time is running out. So thank you to all my guests. Thank you, lovely Kelvin McKenzie, and to you for joining me. And next, we had the weather, which I hope is going to be absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst, and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. There will be rain in the forecast over the next few days, turning particularly windy on Friday, but staying mild for the time of year throughout. Looking at the pressure pattern, low pressures moving in from the Atlantic, giving the cloud and rain. This low pressure in particular will give some very strong winds across Scotland and northern England as we head through Friday. A Met Office warning